Good evening and welcome
Evening, folks.
to another edition of the Monsters Den. I am Pete Pardo and my co-host tonight.
Rich Catino, cheers to the den and to the monsters.
That is correct. I've been drinking beer, but I'll cheers with some water.
Got a little white vino.
There you go. So you guys have asked for it. We're delivering it. 80s horror, specifically 80s slasher films. So the only thing tonight is we're not going to talk about the big boys. So we're not going to talk about Freddy and Jason and
Michael, Chucky, or Leatherface.
That's right. So that opens up a whole other field of popular films, or even not so popular films, that fit the line of slash and gash, the slasher films, but not the real popular ones. But most people, when they think of 80s slasher films, they always seem to hone in on those characters and films we just talked about. But there's a lot of other good films just underneath that I think warrant attention. So Rich and I have each picked 3 films, and we're going to talk a little bit about each one of them and why you should check them out. And we may even do a part 2 of this. So I'll let Rich kick us off with his first choice here.
By the way, those were the big franchises. That's why they were like the big 5, because they had so many sequels and they made the most money and the most recognizable.
That's right.
So these are like the B and C rosters.
That's right.
So one of mine I picked. Can you see that with the lighting all right?
Yep.
The Slumber Party Massacre, the Driller Killer. So they made a few of these movies. The second one, if you remember, since this is a metal channel too, you remember the guy was the driller killer with the guitar body, with the drill, with the neck, with the drill at the end. Yeah, that was cool. Horrible, but not really a good movie, but it was just great to have a guitar guy with a drill on it. So it's a simple premise. There's a lunatic that escapes from wherever, and he's running around town, and there's a bunch of girls that have a sleepover. So they're hanging out, smoking a little pot, doing their thing. Little bit of nudity going on, always in a good 80s horror movie. So you got some of that in there, which is great for the guys. I don't know about the girls, maybe. You never know.
It's mostly guys watching these for the most case.
In the 80s, yeah. And the killer is your basic guy. He's not anything special. He doesn't have a fancy costume. He's not disfigured or anything like that, which makes him interesting too. He just could be a regular guy walking up the street. Kills are good. They don't look too bad. It doesn't look like it's really low budget, even though the presentation of the film is a little grainy. Even when you see it on Blu-ray, it's a little, unpolished. It seems like it's a little underground, low budget movie, but still enjoyable. The kills are good. The special effects are good. And it's an interesting ending too. Can't tell you what the ending is, but it's not what you typically see in a 80s horror movie where the girls are falling every 2 seconds and they're all the victims. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate this one a lot. This was always a favorite. And the box art's always, 80s horror movies to begin with. The box art is sometimes even better than the movie.
True.
So cool.
I think most of these 80s films, they had sort of a formula, but the formula really worked for us because I remember, growing up as a teenager in the late 70s, early 80s. And, it had to have, most of them had kind of a cool soundtrack.
Yeah.
A lot of gore. Mm-hmm. Special effects weren't always top notch. A good amount of nudity, a lot of teens making stupid decisions. And a whole kind of who done it, right? For some of these films, if you didn't know who the protagonist was, it's like, okay, well, who was the person who's doing all the killing? And I think that really comes to play in my choice from 1980, which is Terror Train. And yes,
very cool.
That is Jamie Lee Curtis right there. So she's fairly fresh off of the Halloween films, right?
Right.
They were trying to make her the Scream Queen. So not only the first 2 Halloween films, Terror Train, Prom Night, The Fog. She's showing up all over the place. And this movie is basically all about a group of, I think it's pre-med college teens, right? Mm-hmm. They're getting, they want to do something special for New Year's Eve. So what do? They book a train trip that's going to go all night, right? So they all these, young kids get on this train. They got all the booze, they got the entertainment, all that kind of stuff. And lo and behold, there's actually someone on the train who's killing them off one by one by one. And the whole film is kind of like a whodunit, right? But you got some, interesting stars in here other than Jamie Lee Curtis. So you got David Copperfield, who plays the magician. David Copperfield was a very popular magician.
Forgot about that.
Magician. Did I say musician? Magician at the times.
Yeah.
And then you got Ben Johnson, who plays one of the conductors. And Ben Johnson was in The Last Picture Show, classic, early '70s film. He was in like a lot of westerns and things like that. So it's a really cool film. It's kind of fun. Not a lot of gore. I mean, this is not like over the top or anything like that. But the whole film,
it's not terribly gory like a lot of them.
No, it really isn't. But it's a good kind of like who done it, like who is the killer. I mean, from the get-go, you're trying to think of who the killer is. And the funny thing is, by the time you actually get to the reveal of who the killer is, you're like hitting yourself in the head. It's like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. But you were like expecting someone else throughout the entire movie because they kept like playing up the chills, like trying to pin it on someone else. And then when you actually find out who the killer is, you're like, man, they totally like hinted at that early on in the film, and I totally didn't get it. And Jamie Lee is fun as always. She's basically running around screaming and fighting with the killer, trying to get away. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's my first choice.
I always enjoyed that one too, and I like the mask that the guy wears too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and he so he wears that in the beginning of the film, and then he takes on different disguises throughout the film. So basically, what he does is it's like a costume party. In addition to being a New Year's party, it's a costume party on the train. So what he does is he keeps killing people and stealing their costumes, portraying whoever they were. So everybody keeps thinking, oh, look, here's such and such, here's such and such, and not the case. So it's a good one.
Yep. All right, my second one is I don't know if you can see it. It's dark cover. My Bloody Valentine.
It's a good choice.
Yeah, you got to love the 80s horror because it just took every holiday and just violated it. Just ruined it for everybody, you know? Happy Birthday to Me, New Year's Evil, Silent Night, Deadly Night. I mean, every holiday, every event was just spoiled by a serial killer.
And a lot of the stories were kind of similar in nature, but because you threw a different holiday into the mix, hey, makes it different.
So this one, I always love this one for several reasons, but I like the killer's design too. Very simple with the jumpsuit and the gas mask because it takes place in a mine tunnel.
Right.
Some of the story. So it's about a mine that caves in, and there's several guys that work in there that get trapped. And one of the guys, I think it's a couple weeks or something, that one of the guys or a couple of the guys are stuck under there, and the one guy completely loses it. So when they pull him out, they take him away, and he is away for a few years. And they think he comes back to take revenge on the town for what happened. That's what you think. But there's a little bit of a plot twist to this one, so it's not as obvious you think it is. Good kills, very good special effects, very creative too. A little bit of that good old 80s nudity in here as well. Another good one. Another good one for that. You just got to pay attention to the plot because you think it might be one thing, but it's a little bit different. So I think why I picked this and Slumber Party Massacre is because it's not so predictable and easy to think of who you think is the killer.
Yeah, that is I mean, just so you know how Rich and I do these, I usually let him pick like 3 and then I'll pick 3 alternates, and that was the one I kind of had in my early list, and Rich picked it. I'm like, that's cool, because I would have picked it too. That is one of the that's like a top 5 of the second tier, I think. Easily.
I agree.
And in fact, they made a sequel of that. What was that, 5, 6, 7 years ago? I don't even remember. And,
it was a remake of it, actually.
Yeah. That's what I meant. I meant a remake. Yeah. And not too bad, actually. Because
it was fun.
I'm pretty down on the remakes for the most part, but that one was not too bad.
Yeah. And what else? Oh, it's cool how the killer lets you know that you're going to die in this as well. It totally revolves around the holiday.
Yeah.
That's also really cool, the way he's letting you know that something bad's going to happen.
Yep, exactly.
So I also enjoy that.
Foreshadowing, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's always a favorite of mine. Even like the remake. I thought the remake was pretty solid.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I generally don't like these remakes that they do, but that I did like the
Yeah,
remake of that one. Pretty good.
yeah. It had one of the two brothers from the Supernatural TV series. He was starring it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Forgot the
I
guy's
forget
name.
what it. Yeah, I forget his name, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Good casting that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a keeper. That one. I dig that one. That's
Yeah. And it's not low budget either. It doesn't come across as the acting's not chintzy or juvenile. It's pretty strong, I think.
Yep. Exactly. All right, my third choice is kind of similar to that one, but I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna
Okay.
do something.
You violate a holiday as well.
It's not so much a holiday, but it's got a similar premise. But I'm gonna wait on that one. I'm gonna go kind of like in the order that they were released in the theaters. So my
Yeah.
number two film here is 1980's Maniac.
Another
And,
great box art cover. Oh
yeah,
man, that
totally.
when we used to be able to go into the video store, and rent your VHS tapes, that caught my attention like that. I was like, damn, I
You
gotta
don't even
rent
have to
that.
know who's in it, right? You see this, and it's funny
Didn't
because
care.
I watched this again earlier, or actually yesterday, and I was watching the little featurette that they had on the special features, and the
Yeah.
director was talking about how they were horrified with the kind of the poster art for here, because if you look really carefully, the killer's got a giant erection, and they're like, what was the thought process behind?
I never even
I
thought
never
of. I
noticed it
never
either,
even
right? I never
never
noticed
saw
it
that.
either. And then I went and
Never
looked at
thought
it.
of
I was
that.
like, yep, that's absolutely correct. So
Oh
um,
my god.
I've watched this film numerous times, but I haven't seen it. I hadn't seen it in many, many years until I watched
Yeah.
it yesterday again. And Rich and I were kind of talking off camera, and this is like a brutal film, and it's so
Yeah.
weird,
Yeah.
but it perfectly depicts the like if you do a film in the perspective of the serial killer,
Yes.
that's this. I
It's
mean,
the
again, not
journey.
that any of us know that or know what it's
Yeah.
about, but if you've like looked into the stories of Gacy and Berkowitz and all these serial killers, they're all pretty fucked up, right? And they all
Yeah.
have this weird perception of the world and life.
Right.
And man, Joe Spinell, the actor, who you remember from the Godfather movies, and he always
Yeah.
played these tough guys and mafia and whatever.
Right.
He plays the killer here, all right, Frank Zito, and man, he just does such a great job. And this film is so like dark and dirty and dingy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
it's just like it's almost like if Scorsese were to film like a serial killer horror film, this would have
Yes.
been it.
It's not your typical crazy guy chasing after a bunch of teenagers with their boobs bouncing around. It's a
Not
little
at all.
different than that. And it's
Not at all.
totally inside, and it's really from the killer's perspective, most of it.
The whole thing is so here you got this guy who living in his apartment, and in his apartment it's a weird film because he's got all these mannequins in
Yeah.
his apartment, and he goes out and he kills like women and like takes
Yes.
their cuts their hair, their scalp off, and then brings
Yeah.
it back and puts them on the mannequins. It's
Right.
weird. It's
And talks
really
to the mannequins like he
talks
loves
to
them,
them.
and
Yeah,
it's so wild. Yeah.
he's so like off the wall, and it's got Carolyn Monroe in it, who I
Mm.
mean, all of us guys who watch like the big creature films, like the Sinbad movies and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Carolyn Monroe was like a sex goddess, one of
Mhm.
the hot actresses back in like the 60s and 70s, and she's actually in this film. She plays a photographer, and she only comes in later in the film, but she adds like a little bit of legitimacy to this film because it's really low budget. But man, is this
Yeah.
effective? It's creepy, it's
Yeah.
dingy.
Yeah.
You got Tom Savini,
Special
gore
effects.
effects. I mean,
Yeah.
let's be real. The scene where, and Savini is in the film for a brief minute. So there's a scene where he's in a car with a woman he's dating, and they're making out in the back seat. And all of a sudden, Spinell's character is kind of scoping them out, right? And he jumps on I don't want to give it too much away, but he jumps
Yeah.
on the car with a gun and shoots through the
Yeah.
windshield of the car, and like
Yeah.
Savini's head just explodes. And
Yeah.
it's fantastic. It's
Yeah. The
fantastic.
effects are pretty flawless in that.
Yeah, yeah, and there's plenty of gore in this film,
Yeah.
and but it's got just like I said, it's got this dingy, really dirty, dark, demented
Yeah.
quality to it, and it's like I know a lot of people like kind of when this film came out, people were like, "Oh my God, it's awful, and
Yeah.
it's just all about the gore and all this kind of stuff." But when you watch it today, this is probably one of the best like kind of serial killer films ever made. And I
Yeah.
won't give away too much of the end, but throughout the movie, you kind of understand how demented this character is. He's actually more demented than you actually think at the end. So I
Right.
won't give it away. Definitely see this if you haven't.
It's very different. It's a very different entry for the whole decade. It
Yeah.
definitely stands out amongst all the other type of slasher movies.
Yeah, it definitely does. Definitely does. I literally probably haven't watched it in about 15 years. And
Yeah.
when I watched it yesterday, I was like, wow, this is a
Yeah.
seriously good movie for this
Yep.
genre.
I agree. Yep. Okay. My third one is The Burning.
Good one.
So this is slightly different box art. Well, it's totally different box art from what the original had. The original one, I think it's the guy's hands up in the air with the hedge cutters,
Yep.
clippers.
Yep.
So this is a redone version. I mean, updated cover art for the DVD. But this movie actually predates story-wise, and when it got initially greenlit to get done, Friday the 13th. But it's a camp movie about a guy. It's actually, I gotta look up. Hold on a second, because I was just looking it up before. It's actually a story about somebody. This is actually someone that. Hold on, I had to move my camera there. So The Burning is based off of an urban legend, the Cropsey Maniac. So that's what the story is based off of. And like I said, this was already in production before. They were going to work on this before Friday the 13th came out. So that's interesting. And I didn't realize that it's a Weinstein production.
Oh, is it really? Okay. All right.
This was one of their earlier films that they worked on. So hopefully it's before they became all creepy and whatnot. But it's got some great special effects again. If you remember the raft scene,
Yes.
you remember that scene?
Yep.
It is brutal.
Yep.
There's a lot of cool surprises when the kills happen. The killer is a little disfigured. I'm not going to say how and why, but it's that old story of, when you go to camp, you got to be very cautious and everybody's afraid there's some lunatic in the woods. And this is that story. It happens before Friday the 13th does the same thing. Just slightly different, not the same plot though.
And isn't a pre-Seinfeld Jason Alexander in
Jason
that?
Alexander, yes, he stars in this as well. When he had a whole full head of hair and he's young. Yep.
That's crazy.
So yeah, this is a good one, and the reveal is subtle until you finally see him as well, the killer, and they tell a good story about him and what happens and why, and a little bit of the backstory, and they do flashbacks throughout the movie, so you're caught up.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that.
It's a good.
I haven't watched that in a while. I need to. I have that up here too. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a favorite.
All right, my last choice for today, from 1981, and I mentioned earlier that kind of similar. The story's somewhat similar to Rich's last choice. I'm talking about The Prowler from 1981.
Another great box art too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And this is taken exactly from a scene in the film. So this is basically another one of those kind of, guy pissed off at a bunch of people and comes back to, and here he's like an old war GI, right? Yeah. So this film took some flack at the time because the country wasn't ready for a war veteran coming back to kill people, so to speak, right? Because our war veterans should be better than that, right? But and this the original premise of this film actually took place just after World War II, where you got a young girl, I guess she was high school or shortly thereafter, who writes her love, who's off at war, letter saying, you know what, I'm breaking up with you. I met someone new, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So then I think it's like at the prom or something like that, or whatever it was. Her and the boyfriend are hanging out. They leave the prom. They go out and the the grounds of the where the prom is, and they're making out, whatever, and all of a sudden this guy shows up with a pitchfork and kills them both, right?
Yeah.
So and that obviously was the boyfriend. So then you fast forward, 30 some odd years to like 1980, and all of a sudden now this same what appears to be, and that the case was unsolved, it appears to be the same killer is back wreaking havoc. Also happens to be on the night of a big kind of like dance and party for the college graduation,
Right.
college in the town, so on and so forth. And it's again another one of those kind of whodunits, right? So you get this guy dressed up in the the army outfit with the full mask, gas mask, and all that kind of stuff, and he's using all these different knives and pitchforks and things to kill people, and one by one he's killing kids from the university. And the whole movie is like, okay, well, who actually is this person? So it's got some really good kills. And again, Tom Savini does all of
Tom Savini.
Yep. Yeah. So you got some nudity, you got a great kill in the shower, right? You get there's another scene where this one kid gets like a knife through the top of his head that comes out through the bottom of his jaw.
Right.
It's like you've never seen anything like this before, right?
No.
Really cool stuff. And in fact, the lead actress who's in this film, who was only 20 at the time, she also was really big in daytime soap operas in the 80s. She was on, I think, like Days of Our Lives or something like that. You've probably seen her face before. Okay. And you got two really interesting, like big time actors in this film who actually have very small roles. So you've got the guy who plays the sheriff in the town is Farley Granger, who actually played and starred in two like really big Hitchcock films, Rope and was it Murder on a Train? I'm probably getting the name.
Yeah, I don't know who that guy is. Never heard
so
of him.
You've probably seen him before. He was a popular actor like in the 50s. 60s. And then you got Lawrence Tierney, plays the kind of demented like old war guy who lives in the house next door to the sorority house. And Lawrence Tierney played the old dad guy in Reservoir Dogs. He's the bald-headed guy, the actor who's been around for a million years, but he's got like a line in the whole film. He's barely in it, but a really good film, and one of those, I think, early 80s slasher films that at the time was kind of like cast aside, low budget, wasn't given like a wide release or anything like that, but over the years has gained a really good reputation as one of the greats of the genre in the early 80s. So
and I dug out some others just for honorable mentions, because you got to, because there's so many great ones, and the box art alone. So Silent Night, Deadly Night, I mentioned that before.
Yep.
The Killer Santa Claus.
Yep.
Alone in the Dark, which has a couple famous actors in that one. That's a cool one. This one has Bill Paxton in it. Mortuary. Do you remember that box art?
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Wow.
Another cool classic. And that's one of his first acting gigs too. This one's always been one of my favorites, and not too many people know this one, The Mutilator.
Oh, geez, I saw that years ago. Yeah, I don't even own that. That's a good one. Yeah.
By picks, by axe, by sword, by. What a tagline. The taglines were great too.
Yeah.
There's a really brutal killing in this one with the fishing hook. That's a brutal one. Happy Birthday to Me.
Yep. I remember that one.
Another great box art. Then you got Stage Fright. You remember Stage Fright?
I do.
With the bird looking like the riot. What was that thing on the riot covers? What was that thing called? The
seal.
The seal.
Yeah.
It's like a bird kind of thing.
Yeah.
Always reminded me of that. That's another cool, interesting one.
Is that a Blue Underground release on that one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the one I got.
They always did a good job, those guys. Yeah.
Pieces.
Oh, Pieces. Oh, hell yeah. Yeah.
Another chainsaw movie, right?
I saw that in the theaters, man. Woo.
Yeah, that's brutal too.
Yeah.
Talk about brutal. And lastly, probably one of the craziest surprise endings you'll ever see in a horror movie. Sleepaway Camp.
Yeah, Sleepaway Camp is great. Yeah.
Yeah. Can't go wrong with that one too.
Yep. So a couple I didn't actually pull out. I can probably grab one of them real quick. Hold on.
Yeah, I had to give an honorable mention to those. Those are classics.
This is not 80s. This was late 70s, but I love this one. Toolbox Murders.
Never saw that one.
Oh, you have to. Yeah,
I don't think I ever saw that one.
this is quite good. Late 70s brutal slasher films, Toolbox Murders and Driller Killer. Driller Killer is pretty wild also.
Okay.
So
And since you're mentioning 70s, there's one that came out before Halloween, which is Halloween-ish. Remember Black Christmas?
oh yeah, I did a whole show on Black Christmas a couple months ago. Yeah, I love Black Christmas.
Yeah, that's one of those that they always credit Halloween for getting that slasher type of thing from the perspective of the killer from Black Christmas.
Yeah, I think actually two of the most underrated and influential slasher films of the 70s that I think helped spawn all of this stuff
Yeah.
is Black Christmas and Twitch of the Death Nerve or Bay of Blood by Mario Bava, or whatever name it goes under you want to call it. But I think both of those had so much influence on all these slasher films in a big way. So if you haven't seen either of those two, you need to go out and check them out. But yeah, and this has got Cameron Mitchell in it, who you absolutely know. That's him right there. He was on all the 70s like TV shows and movies and things like that. But yeah, this is a good one.
I never saw it. I got to watch that this week.
Yeah, in fact, they remade this in the 90s, and Toby Hooper, who directed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, actually directed. Yeah.
He also directed another good one, which wasn't a slasher movie, but that's why I didn't bring it out. But Funhouse.
Funhouse is great. Yeah.
Remember Funhouse?
Have you ever seen Eaten Alive? He also directed Eaten Alive, which is about a killer crocodile.
The alligator, the alligator crocodile. So those fall into another topic for another show. Yeah. But still great horror movies again.
Yeah. There's so many good ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there you guys have it. Some 80s slasher films. Obviously, we've just kind of tip of the iceberg here on this. There's so many great ones throughout that decade, and there's even a lot of other ones in the 90s, and there's a bunch in the 70s as well. So as we pointed out a couple here. So this is on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. We got lots more Monsters Den coming up. So Rich and I are coming right back over the next couple days with part 2 of our look at Hammer horror, which I am like chomping at the bit for, because I love Hammer stuff so much, and there's so many to choose from, and so we got 6 more to lay on you on Wednesday or Thursday, something like that.
Thursday, and then maybe we'll do another part 2 of this, like you said, slashers. Or
I think so, because Rich, I've already spilled the beans to everybody that even though I said originally we were going to do tons of these Monsters Den leading up to Halloween, I have decided that Halloween does not end the Monsters Den stuff. Yeah, so what I was doing before October is I was doing like maybe 1 or 2 Monsters Den episodes a month. I'm going to kind of continue with this Fast and Furious stuff like we've been doing, because I think it's I'm digging it. So, and I know everybody else is. So
and there's so much to explore too. So many types of these type of movies, categories that they fall into.
Yeah, and you got horror from the 30s till modern day, and there's just so many decades and things to cover. It's like you got the giant monster films, you got the cheesy sci-fi films, you got the Hammer stuff.
Can you see my shirt?
Amityville Horror. We haven't even done haunted house stuff yet, right?
Right, haunted house movies. So we've got a bunch of those classics.
Yep, space monsters. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. So, so there you have it. So, all right, everybody. So, cool. Comment on these films we talked about. Maybe throw out some other films that you really like from the 80s that are slasher films. Typically not the big popular ones. So again, the Freddy, the Jason, all that kind of stuff. And give us some ideas for maybe a future episode, and we'll hopefully take you up on it. So we'll see everybody later on with another episode of the Monsters Den.
See you next round.
Tune in once again if you dare, right, Rich?
If you dare, right.
Rich Catino, I am Pete Pardo. Good night, everybody.
Cheers, guys.